So what is the state of the coin grading market today? Hey guys, it's Ben the Coin Geek at Old Pueblo Coin in Tucson, Arizona, and TucsonCoinshow.com. Come on down to Tucson in January, enjoy the fine weather. This video is being published in the summer of aught 24, and it's not quite as fun as the summer of 69, but we're going to talk a little bit about some of the coin grading industry standards and just a little bit of an opinion piece about where we are post-COVID compared to where we were before COVID and then of course during COVID. So for a lot of people who are new to coin collecting, coin grading is when you take a coin and you put it in a third-party holder and they assign an overall grade to the coin, their opinion of what the condition of the coin is. This is something that has been happening in large quantities since the mid-1980s when it really took hold with the PCGS and NGC kind of leading the charge throughout that time period. You did have, of course, also ANACS, ANACS, which back in the day their holders were these little holders, which are sometimes nicknamed soapbox holders, and then today they have the big yellow holders. They're not bigger than most holders, they're just more yellow than most holders. And into the new scene in the last year basically is CACG grading. This is a company that was already around for 15 years, put together by a gentleman who helped the founding of PCGS and NGC both, so he has a lot of experience. Originally they were making just these little green stickers that they were putting on holders to give an opinion about coins that were already were already graded or certified. So that's the backstory. We come into the COVID era and we start seeing these huge delays for everything. People had time on their hands and they ended up sending lots of coins in for grading, and that created huge backlogs for these companies. They were taking, before COVID, I would send off coins to NGC or PCGS, and they have different level services. So if you have a more expensive coin, the turnaround times are faster and they cost you more. If you have a less expensive coin, you can go on an economy service and then they will be gone for longer periods of time. Well, before COVID, both PCGS and NGC would have turnaround times on their economy services of about 4 to 6 weeks. Their standard services oftentimes were in the 2 to 4 weeks, and their express services were lickety split. Like you'd send something in on an express service, and as soon as they got it, it went in for grading and turned around the next day or 2 days later, and your biggest issue was waiting on the shipping, and that was your biggest holdup. That was before COVID. And then you hit the COVID era and boom, there it is, right? And a lot of things happened in the interim with these companies. So somewhere in there, both PCGS and NGC got bought out by private equity firms, and they made a lot of modifications. And so those modifications have in some ways affected how the companies operate, and it's affected customer service and how I view things. Before COVID, I pretty much only used NGC. I rarely used PCGS, mostly because NGC had better price points, better turnaround times, and better customer service. And that was I didn't see the point or need to use PCGS for anything. Unfortunately, since COVID, we've seen, and not COVID, but really since they've been bought out by these corporate American companies, you start seeing them do what corporate American companies do, and they start consolidating things into a call center or moving things around here or there, getting rid of better labor to hire cheaper labor, and that creates different types of quality control issues and efficiency issues for the customer. And so unfortunately, I find that NGC was once my favorite, is now not my go-to anymore, really. But I want customer service, and I just do. Now, both PCGS and NGC have had better customer service since they've kind of got out of the COVID malaise. So we no longer see 5 and 6 month turnaround times on most things, but occasionally if you send something in for a restoration or conservation service, you will see really long turnaround times for some of that stuff. I'm finding longer and longer turnaround times on items at PMG, which is NGC's grading for paper money service, and also for sometimes their ancients get really backed up. And both of those are separate special services that you can get into. PCGS and NGC and CAC grading have all made online platforms where you can submit coins electronically first instead of filling out a paper form, and then you just have to print the form out and send it in, and it helps. It's designed to help their systems when the coins come in to get checked in faster and move through quicker. None of these systems are perfect yet. They have modified them over the years, some of them because they have older systems that they've kind of tried to move into a newer system. I find that CAC grading services are, I think, the best when it comes to their electronic side stuff, mostly because all of their stuff is built brand new, right? So instead of having to take old systems and reinvent them, all of their systems are brand new for checking stuff in. And I'm sure that all these companies spend time on trying to get their electronic stuff going well, but we find theirs to be the easiest to use, consumer friendly that way. Some of the highlights that we see from CAC grading is going to be that their turnaround times have been much faster than PCGS and NGC, and their price points on a lot of things are actually lower. As an example, if you send in a coin that has a variety attribution and you have it attributed already yourself, you can send it in, and I think it'll only cost you $5 to get the variety attribution on it, whereas PCGS and NGC, if I do the same thing to get that on the label, it's going to cost me $18. Well, you multiply that by 10 coins, and pretty soon you've got a pretty hefty difference in the coins that you're dealing with. Of course, the most cost-friendly is going to be ANACS or ANACS. They have always been kind of like the economy service in the grading realm, and there's definitely a place and time for using ANACS, and one of them is varieties. I know, for example, if you have a lot of VAMs, which are a type of Morgan dollar, a lot of people are going to use ANACS for that in those services there because it's less expensive, and they will also attribute things that PCGS and NGC will not attribute. They get back into a little bit more of the minutia of varieties that some of the larger grading companies won't. You like how I try not to hurt people's feelings. It's kind of hard to have an opinion when you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, right? But here comes the caveat, the big caveat here with CAC grading, who's only been around for a year, and that is, are they too strict? Are they too tough on coins? Are they too strict on surface quality? And of course, I think that the market's answer so far is yes. I know a lot of people that have been sending coins in that they're just not happy with how it's coming back. And so, when dealers aren't happy with things, it's not always because dealers aren't happy. I think sometimes that's a misnomer in the marketplace. What happens is a lot of dealers are sending coins in for customers, right? So it's not just that there's a small group of people that are unhappy, it's that you run into a larger group of people after that, because a lot of that is going to be client-based complaints, right? It's not, I'm not, sending in all the coins that get graded are for me. A lot of them will be for clients that you send coins in for grading. So one of the things that has happened, I think, since CAC grading has come on, is that we've seen a lot of people complaining that both NGC and PCGS are kind of tightening up the reins a little bit when it comes to some of the grading standards. You'll see a lot more what they call detailed grades. So the surface quality issue is one that is kind of tricky, because the coins come in so many different surface qualities, whether the coin's uncirculated or proof, or has a lot of circulation. And somewhere on the spectrum of a coin that is like as perfect and new as it can be from the mint, to it had a lot of activity since it's been out from the mint, to someone just polished the sucker and it looks like a hubcap, there's some type of continuum in there, and it feels like that center point of coins that were graded what we call a straight grade, which means there's no negative words on the holder. It feels like that has started to slide a little bit more towards the conservative area. And of course, this is the opposite of what we've learned about over the years with what they call gradeflation, which is the concept of, well, the grading standards have gotten easier. So CAC grading will argue that we're just trying to bring the standards back before gradeflation, right? And I think that there is something to be said there. And in fairness, I think greatflation is a real thing, but also much like actual inflation, I think that things are generally hyped, like in the echo chamber. You hear a lot of things, and you never hear when things kind of come back to a base point that's more affordable, or you're just usually looking at a small snippet of information and blowing it out of proportion. I can give you examples all day long of greatflation, but also it ignores the millions of coins that were graded that are still graded accurately. I see a lot of coins in old holders that are still, I think, graded accurately to today's standards. So I think that although greatflation is real, I think that it's overstated. Now, also, I haven't had a ton of experience with CAC grading yet. We've had, a handful of submissions we've sent in, and I can see where there's definitely a more conservative bend there. My biggest thing that I'm seeing out of the grading companies, all of them, is not straight grading as many coins as they used to. So in other words, there'll be surface quality issues that they're going to call out and be what I would call pickier, which is what it is. The grading landscape will always change over time, up, down, sideways, back and forth. The one thing that I find most confusing for me as someone who has been in the industry for a long time and tries to send coins in for grading and expects them to grade kind of how I see them is, some of these shifts, I have my eye trained to standards for the last 25 years, and when they change, I get frustrated with how they come back. But the one that's probably one of the more frustrating things for me has to do with toning, tarnish, and color on coins. What is toning? What is tarnish? What is PVC? What is damage? And some things are obviously, once again, if you think of things on a spectrum, some things are like super obvious, like this is a super choice original coin and this is polished, to use my example. But when it comes to toning and what is considered to be original toning or not, that's been the big shift over the last 5 or 6 years, and maybe even 2 or 3 years, that I find a little bit on the frustrating, or perhaps the most frustrating, which is to say, I will see coins that are already in holders that are toned, and I will have coins that, from my experience, are naturally toned and just from being in old holders, and I will send them in, and they will be coming back with environmental damage and questionable color on them, on coins that I would probably just kind of disagree with that, with what's being stated there. The hardest one is for me, traditionally, because I've got the long view of things, PCGS and NGC would either call something artificial toning or not. They started doing questionable color, I don't know when, 5, 6 years ago, where they almost punt, like, you as someone getting a coin graded, you want the professional to tell you yes or no. You don't want to hear, we don't know, we're not sure. You don't want to hear, listen, anything with this type of toning, from now on, we're just calling it questionable color or altered surfaces or whatever. We're just not going to grade them anymore. Now, if a time and place comes, this is another thing. This is like the next step when it comes to all 4 of these companies. I think the next step for all 4 of these companies is the next commentary is what I call transparency. And for transparency, what I would love to see from all of these companies is the ability to stand up and have like some type of a grading powwow where you come out and say, look, we're not grading coins that look like this, 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 and this. You do a slideshow presentation, say the counterfeiters are getting too good at X, Y, and Z. And counterfeit's the wrong term to use here, but the people that are doctoring coins and changing the color artificially, if we see any of this stuff, we're just going to not grade it. But come out and say that. Make a public policy about it, show it off, give examples, right? This is pretty common sense to me. The coin market, it's not like you're trying to govern 30 million people or something. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of active collectors who really enjoy the hobby, and they want you to come out and say, hey, this is what we're not grading and this is why. And I think that's very doable in today's marketplace for any of these companies to do, right? For transparency, it's been kind of hard, since the big two, PCGS and NGC, got bought out by corporations, transparency has gone backwards, I feel. For CAC grading, people comment on the message boards, and John Albanese actually comments back to people. And we'll actually make adjustments based on the public's reaction to things, which I think is good. And a lot of times he makes a public statement that says, no, we're going to keep doing X, Y, and Z. No, we're going to keep being conservative with our grading. We're not going to loosen it up. Go ahead and crack our coins out. We don't care, right? That's the reaction. And other times he said, they were grading coins that have very heavy tarnish and toning, but the consumer didn't like that. And so they came out and said, yeah, we're no longer going to start stickering coins with heavy dark toning because the public doesn't like it. And so that is transparency in my book. ANACS, who unfortunately I leave out of the conversation a whole lot, they're kind of like the We Try Harder company. There's lots of great coins graded in ANACS holders, the older holders and the new ones. And as far as transparency goes, for me, it's a population thing, right? So the majority of people are using NGC and PCGS, and now CAC grading is coming along. It's not as many population, but there's a lot of people who have very expensive coins that are putting them in those holders, and not just dealers, mind you. I talk to a lot of the public that are collectors, and there are a lot of collectors who like expensive coins and want them in those holders. So once again, it's not a cabal by a bunch of coin dealers to make something happen. When you look at the demand that's there for the guys that are actually buying stuff, at some point there has to be enough market demand to support things, and there has to be enough consumer demand to support things as well. What I love that ANACS does differently than the other coin services do is they show up at local regional coin shows. They have representatives that cover certain regions. They do something unique in that way. So they go out, if you're at a local coin club show, you can find oftentimes an ANACS representative there taking submissions directly, which will save you on shipping. And also you have someone that you can talk to and ask questions to that they can hopefully provide some type of answers for. PCGS and NGC and CAC, for the most part, have only shown up at larger shows. I will say that I happen to know that CAC grading is trying to get to other smaller shows. PCGS and NGC, I have yet to see them show up at smaller shows. But hey, I've got a show in Tucson. Anyone wants to come and join us, they can. I know ANACS already shows up, and we'll see. Anyways, there's a whole lot to be said on the topic of grading companies, the current grading statuses, how they operate and function everywhere from their price points, their customer service, to their actual grading. And all of these things go into customers and consumers who are either very happy, very satisfied, very dissatisfied, possibly somewhere in between, right? So I know you all have opinions about these things. I know some of you think all of this is a racket all of the time. You guys have probably already made those comments before I even finished this video, and I understand that. Also, for those of you who do use multiple services and you're not beholden to just one, give me your thoughts on these things. Like, what have you noticed over the years? What are the processes that have changed for you? And if you are new to the marketplace, leave some comments down about what your perception is about who the grading service is that you should use or not use. Perception is reality lots of times, and what I have found is that there are certain companies that do a much better job of marketing their product and getting it in front of consumers' eyes and giving them the appearance of being the better company and the one that you should use. I think that historically we'll see where that lands, but I want to hear from you guys, depending on your historical perspective, old, new, in between, how you view this topic. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching today. I'm Ben the Coin Geek. You can subscribe by clicking on the owl button in the corner and watch more videos on the right side of the screen. Thanks.